Welcome, dear listener, to a journey through myth and memory. Tonight we step into the world of ancient Greece, a land where gods walked among mortals, shaping fate with unseen hands. Our story belongs to Athena, the goddess of wisdom and light. She is born from the mind of Zeus, radiant in armor, calm yet fierce. Athena protects cities, guides heroes, and brings order to chaos. But where wisdom shines, shadows also gather in silence. In those shadows, a maiden named Medusa once lived. She was not always feared, nor marked by a terrible curse. Once she was admired, her beauty a gift that lit the temple halls. She served as a priestess in Athena's sacred sanctuary, devoted, pure, and bound to vows that carried divine weight. Yet fate is never still. It shifts like the winds over the sea. A single moment would alter Medusa's path forever. From grace to sorrow, from light to shadow, her life transformed. And Athena, guardian of order, became part of that change. Their destinies twined, forming a tale told for centuries. Tonight we will wander through that tale, step by step. Not of battles, not of blood, but of symbols and meaning. This is the story of Athena and the Curse of Medusa. In the beginning, before the cities rose, the gods shaped the order of the heavens and the earth. Among them stood Athena, the daughter of Zeus, a goddess unlike any other in all of Olympus. Her birth itself was a wonder, whispered about in songs and carved into marble walls. Zeus, king of gods, was struck by pain in his mind, a thunder within his skull. With a flash of divine light, Athena emerged, clad in gleaming armor, shield in hand. She did not cry like a child, nor stumble like a newborn, but stood strong from the start. Her eyes shone with clarity, and her voice carried calm authority across the skies. From that moment, she became the embodiment of wisdom, strategy, and noble courage. The gods looked upon her with awe, for she was born whole, perfect, and untamed. Unlike others who thrived in excess or passion, Athena thrived in reason and thought. She carried no hunger for chaos, no thirst for reckless fire, but balanced all with order. Mortals came to honor her as the guardian of knowledge, crafts, and the guiding hand of war. They built temples upon high hills, offering olive branches, her sacred gift to mankind. For it was Athena who planted the olive tree in Athens, a symbol of peace and strength. The tree gave oil for lamps, wood for shelter, and fruit for life, a divine blessing. In this act, she proved that wisdom was not distant, but practical, kind, and sustaining. Athena was not only the goddess of thought, but also the shield of cities and heroes. In battle, she did not charge blindly, but planned with precision, calm, and foresight. She stood by warriors who sought justice, never those who fought for greed or vanity. Her hand guided Odysseus through storms. Her voice whispered to Perseus in courage. Wherever fairness lived, Athena's light could be found shining over the mortal realm. But her presence was not only in battlefields or tales of kings and wanderers. She was woven into the daily lives of artisans, builders, and teachers across Greece. The potter shaping clay felt her spirit in steady hands and patient creation. The weaver at her loom called upon Athena to guide threads into harmony. Every craft, every thoughtful act, carried the imprint of her divine wisdom. Even the rulers of cities feared and loved her, for she represented order and justice. Athens itself bore her name, chosen after she gifted the olive above all treasures. Her image crowned their shields, her statue rose above their citadel, shining in bronze. She was not distant, not cold, but close enough to inspire hearts and sharpen minds. Her wisdom was a flame that lit the darkest of paths without burning those who held it. Yet Athena, for all her calm strength, was not without stern resolve and judgment. The sacred must remain sacred, the vows of mortals never to be lightly broken. Her temples were places of silence, purity, and devotion to the divine order. Any who entered carried the weight of respect, for her gaze was ever watchful. Athena's wisdom was both gift and guard, a force that uplifted yet also restrained. Her story in myths reminds us that wisdom is not gentle alone, but also firm. It shapes cities, it molds destiny, it draws clear the line between chaos and order. And so, in the heart of Greece, the goddess stood, a figure of light and resolve. Her presence in myth is eternal, not only as a goddess, but as an idea enduring. Athena remains the mind of Olympus, the shield of mankind, and the flame of reason. High upon the hills of Greece, where the air is clear, the temples of Athena rose in shining stone. These temples were not merely buildings, but living symbols of wisdom, order, and divine protection. Every column carried weight beyond stone, holding prayers of mortals whispered through generations. The Grand Parthenon in Athens became the crown of her glory, set against the endless blue sky. Its marble walls glowed at dawn, kissed by the sun, a reflection of the goddess's eternal light. Inside, the scent of olive oil lamps lingered, filling the space with a calm and sacred warmth. Statues of Athena towered above all who entered, eyes carved to watch with timeless resolve. Mortals approached in silence, their steps soft against the polished floor of the sacred halls. They carried offerings, olives, honey, woven cloth, symbols of gratitude and devotion to the goddess. For in Athena's temples, the divine met the human. Wisdom met the seeking hearts of mankind. The priestesses of Athena tended the altars, guiding rituals, chants, and the care of sacred fire. Their vows were strong, for serving the goddess meant guarding the sanctity of her wisdom. Athena's temples were not places of fear, but sanctuaries where reason and discipline thrived. Every wall told a story, with carvings of gods, heroes, and battles shaped by divine guidance. Mortals gazed upon them and learned that life was more than chance. It was order and meaning. Children stood beside their parents, hearing stories of heroes aided by Athena's steady hand. Warriors prayed not for blind strength, but for clarity, justice, and a cause worth defending. Craftsmen prayed for steady hands. Weavers prayed for threads to flow smooth and harmonious. Every prayer was met with the silent strength of the goddess, felt in the stillness of stone. The olive branches offered at the altar symbolized peace, wisdom, and the fruit of hard work. They were reminders that Athena valued creation, balance, and service over reckless desire. The temple bells, struck at dawn, rang across the valleys, calling mortals to reflection and order. When storms gathered over the sea, sailors prayed within, hoping Athena would guide them safely. When kings faced decisions, they sought signs within the temple, trusting her wisdom over pride. The architecture itself spoke of balance, each line and form echoing the harmony of thought. Columns stood tall like guardians, roofs wide like wings, enclosing mortals under divine shelter. Every detail was crafted not only for beauty, but to reflect the discipline Athena inspired. The temple steps invited all, rulers, farmers, artisans, and wanderers, to seek her guidance. Athena's presence was not hidden, but alive in the quiet strength of her sacred spaces. Within the temple, silence was not emptiness, but a conversation between mortals and the divine. The flicker of oil lamps mirrored the flame of wisdom, steady yet gentle, guiding the mind. Priestesses moved with calm dignity, their voices carrying chants that echoed through stone halls. Their songs were not of fear, but of reverence, praise, and devotion to the goddess's light. No blood was spilled in these sacred places, only the offering of work, fruit, and olive leaves. The temple stood as a reminder that wisdom, like stone, endures storms and stands unbroken. Mortals knew that within its walls, they were watched, guided, and protected by the goddess. The temple itself became the heart of Athens, the pulse of faith and order for its people. From its steps, justice was spoken, festivals were begun, and unity was strengthened. The sacred vow of the temple was clear: to honor wisdom, to protect order, to cherish balance. And Athena, though far above on Olympus, was felt in every corner, every whisper of prayer. The temple was her bridge to mortals, her eternal home within the world of men. It was here that Medusa once served, devoted, radiant, and bound by the vows of the goddess. But before her story unfolds, the temple itself remains the stage where destiny takes shape. For every stone, every offering, and every vow would echo in the tale yet to be told. The Temple of Athena was not just a building. It was the soul of a goddess carved in stone. High upon the hills of Greece, where the air is clear, the temples of Athena rose in shining stone. These temples were not merely buildings, but living symbols of wisdom, order, and divine protection. Every column carried weight beyond stone, holding prayers of mortals whispered through generations. The Grand Parthenon in Athens became the crown of her glory, set against the endless blue sky. Its marble walls glowed at dawn, kissed by the sun, a reflection of the goddess's eternal light. Inside, the scent of olive oil lamps lingered, filling the space with a calm and sacred warmth. Statues of Athena towered above all who entered, eyes carved to watch with timeless resolve. Mortals approached in silence, their steps soft against the polished floor of the sacred halls. They carried offerings, olives, honey, woven cloth, symbols of gratitude and devotion to the goddess. For in Athena's temples, the divine met the human. Wisdom met the seeking hearts of mankind. The priestesses of Athena tended the altars, guiding rituals, chants, and the care of sacred fire. Their vows were strong, for serving the goddess meant guarding the sanctity of her wisdom. Athena's temples were not places of fear, but sanctuaries where reason and discipline thrived. Every wall told a story, with carvings of gods, heroes, and battles shaped by divine guidance. Mortals gazed upon them and learned that life was more than chance. It was order and meaning. Children stood beside their parents, hearing stories of heroes aided by Athena's steady hand. Warriors prayed not for blind strength, but for clarity, justice, and a cause worth defending. Craftsmen prayed for steady hands, weavers prayed for threads to flow smooth and harmonious. Every prayer was met with the silent strength of the goddess, felt in the stillness of stone. The olive branches offered at the altar symbolized peace, wisdom, and the fruit of hard work. They were reminders that Athena valued creation, balance, and service over reckless desire. The temple bells, struck at dawn, rang across the valleys, calling mortals to reflection and order. When storms gathered over the sea, sailors prayed within, hoping Athena would guide them safely. When kings faced decisions, they sought signs within the temple, trusting her wisdom over pride. The architecture itself spoke of balance, each line and form echoing the harmony of thought. Columns stood tall like guardians, roofs wide like wings, enclosing mortals under divine shelter. Every detail was crafted not only for beauty, but to reflect the discipline Athena inspired. The temple steps invited all, rulers, farmers, artisans, and wanderers, to seek her guidance. Athena's presence was not hidden. but alive in the quiet strength of her sacred spaces. Within the temple, silence was not emptiness, but a conversation between mortals and the divine. The flicker of oil lamps mirrored the flame of wisdom, steady yet gentle, guiding the mind. Priestesses moved with calm dignity, their voices carrying chants that echoed through stone halls. Their songs were not of fear, but of reverence, praise, and devotion to the goddess's light. No blood was spilled in these sacred places, only the offering of work, fruit, and olive leaves. The temple stood as a reminder that wisdom, like stone, endures storms and stands unbroken. Mortals knew that within its walls, they were watched, guided, and protected by the goddess. The temple itself became the heart of Athens, the pulse of faith and order for its people. From its steps, justice was spoken, festivals were begun, and unity was strengthened. The sacred vow of the temple was clear: to honor wisdom, to protect order, to cherish balance. And Athena, though far above on Olympus, was felt in every corner, every whisper of prayer. The temple was her bridge to mortals, her eternal home within the world of men. It was here that Medusa once served, devoted, radiant, and bound by the vows of the goddess. But before her story unfolds, the temple itself remains the stage where destiny takes shape. For every stone, every offering, and every vow would echo in the tale yet to be told. The temple of Athena was not just a building. It was the soul of a goddess carved in stone. Within the sacred halls of Athena's temple, silence held a deeper meaning than the absence of sound. Here the air was heavy with reverence, and every step carried the weight of ancient vows. Among the flicker of oil lamps and the scent of olive branches, priestesses guarded the divine order. Each of them pledged loyalty, purity, and devotion to the goddess, a promise that bound their lives. Medusa was among these chosen few, radiant in her beauty, yet humble in her sacred role. She wore the white robes of service, simple yet dignified, a sign of her devotion to Athena. Her hair, once admired by many, was veiled within the temple as a mark of her vow. The vows of the priestesses were not light promises, but unbreakable threads tied to divine law. They were guardians of purity, protectors of the temple's honor, and keepers of Athena's eternal flame. Day and night, their tasks filled the temple with order, rhythm, and quiet discipline. They prepared offerings with care, olives, fruits, and cloth woven by their own steady hands. They tended the lamps so that light never died, symbolizing wisdom that never falters. Their voices rose in chants, a harmony that echoed through marble walls and reached Olympus. Every word was a reminder that mortals could reach toward the divine through devotion and respect. Medusa excelled in her duties, admired not for beauty alone, but for grace in discipline. She understood the meaning of service, the strength found not in power, but in self-control. Her days passed in ritual, prayer, and teaching younger maidens the ways of sacred life. To her, the temple was not a prison, but a place of purpose, dignity, and quiet joy. The vows shaped her as surely as stone shaped the columns that rose above the city. No laughter rang too loudly, no footsteps echoed without caution in those sacred chambers. The temple was a world apart, a place where mortal desires were left at the gates. Here only devotion mattered, and purity was the shield that honored the goddess. The vows bound the priestesses to Athena, and in return, they shared in her grace. Each vow was a thread in a larger tapestry, woven by mortals but watched by gods. Medusa's vow was strong, but destiny has a way of testing even the purest heart. The vows represented more than ritual. They reflected balance, order, and the bond of trust. To break them was to disturb that balance, to create ripples in the harmony of the divine. Athena, goddess of wisdom, valued loyalty not for her own pride, but for the order it preserved. She demanded no cruelty, but she demanded respect for what was sacred and eternal. Her priestesses, Medusa among them, were living symbols of that eternal flame of devotion. The vows shaped their lives and reminded them that choices carried weight beyond themselves. Every word spoken in prayer, every gesture at the altar, was part of this sacred contract. The priestesses found meaning not in freedom from rules, but in the depth of their service. Their lives were examples to mortals who entered the temple, seeking wisdom or blessing. When travelers came, they saw women of strength, discipline, and quiet beauty in devotion. Medusa shone among them, admired for her dedication, her poise, and her inner strength. Her beauty was spoken of, yet her heart sought only the calm of service to Athena. The vows she carried gave her life direction, like a ship steered by the stars above. They were not burdens, but guiding lights, shaping her destiny in ways unseen. The temple became her world, and the vows became her shield, her compass, her truth. But even the strongest vows may meet trials, for fate tests the resolve of mortals and gods. Medusa's vows, pure and unshaken, stood as a beacon in the temple's sacred halls. Little did she know how her vow would shape not only her life, but her eternal story. For the vows of purity, service, and devotion would one day be at the heart of her fate. The temple of Athena, radiant and eternal, watched over Medusa as she walked her path. Her vow was a promise, and that promise would echo in the myth for centuries to come. In the stillness of the temple, life flowed like a river, steady, quiet, and guided by sacred vows. Medusa walked each day with purpose, her heart bound to Athena, her mind clear in devotion. The torches burned without end, the chants rose with harmony, and the temple felt eternal. Yet fate is never silent for long, for the threads of destiny twist when least expected. One evening, the sky darkened not with storm, but with a weight unseen by mortal eyes. The air in the temple felt heavier, as if time itself was holding its breath in silence. Priestesses carried on their duties, but whispers stirred of omens and signs from the gods. Some spoke of restless seas, others of strange dreams carried through the city of Athens. Medusa, though calm, felt the unease ripple through the air like tremors beneath still water. She prayed with greater fervor, her voice soft yet filled with strength at Athena's altar. But fate cannot always be held back by prayer, for its path is woven by higher hands. It was said that a moment of transgression, a shadow upon the vows, would soon arrive. Not born of malice, nor chosen by Medusa, but carried by forces beyond her mortal will. A twist of destiny, quiet yet powerful, stepped across the sacred threshold of the temple. What was once secure now trembled, as divine order met the chaos of mortal weakness. The vows, unbroken for so long, stood at the edge of trial, fragile as glass in the storm. Medusa found herself caught in the heart of this storm, though she had sought no blame. Her devotion, once shining, became clouded in the eyes of those who watched with fear. For when sacred order is disturbed, it is not the cause alone, but the appearance that matters. Whispers grew into judgments, and judgments weighed heavier than stone within the temple. Athena, watchful and wise, looked upon her priestess with eyes of divine discernment. The goddess, who prized purity and order, now faced a choice in the balance of fate. Was it mercy that should prevail, or justice, clear and unwavering, to protect the sacred? In that moment, the temple became more than stone and marble. It became a stage of destiny, The sacred halls carried not only chants, but questions echoing between heaven and earth. Medusa, unaware of how deeply her life would change, continued her service with devotion. Its shadows followed her steps, unseen but near, weaving a story she could not escape. The priestesses around her felt it too, though they dared not speak more than whispers. Something had shifted in the air, and silence grew thicker than chants or prayers could break. The goddess's temple, once a place of calm, now held the stillness before a storm. Each lamp burned, but their flames flickered with unease, casting long shadows on the walls. Medusa knelt, her eyes closed, her lips forming prayers that carried into the cold night. But the weight of destiny was already moving, shaping her path with threads unbreakable. It was the turning point, subtle yet absolute, when her life began to slip toward legend. From that night, the balance was broken, and Medusa's fate was no longer her own. The temple where she had found peace would soon be the place of her sorrow. The vows she carried with pride would soon transform into the chains of her story, not through cruelty of her heart, but through the twisting design of divine judgment. For even the most faithful can be caught in storms when gods and mortals cross paths. And Medusa, the devoted priestess, now walked on ground that trembled beneath her steps. Her name, once spoken with admiration, would soon echo in fear and misunderstanding. The olive branches offered on the altar seemed heavy, no longer signs of simple peace. Even the marble walls appeared to listen, holding secrets that could not be spoken aloud. The temple bells rang at dawn, but their sound felt hollow, distant, uncertain in tone. The city of Athens carried on, yet within the temple, the weight of fate grew darker. Medusa remained faithful, but faith alone cannot always shield against what is to come. The moment of transgression, the twist of fate, had entered her life with quiet steps. It was not of her choosing, but the burden would rest on her shoulders nonetheless. The sacred vow, once her shield, now stood as the measure by which she would be judged. And though she did not yet know it, the story of Medusa was about to truly begin. The days that followed carried a tension, quiet but heavy, like clouds that promised a storm without rain. Medusa rose each morning to her duties, her hands steady, her voice calm. But her heart carried unease. The temple no longer felt only sacred. It felt watchful, as though unseen eyes lingered in every corner. Priestesses whispered more often, their words hushed, their glances sharp when they thought she did not see. The marble halls echoed differently now, no longer with peace, but with unspoken questions pressing in. And above all, Athena's statue stood tall, its gaze unyielding, its silence heavy with divine judgment. Medusa tried to hold faith close, repeating prayers with the devotion she had known since youth. Her words rose to the ceiling, yet within her, a doubt whispered, quiet but insistent, asking why. Why did the goddess she served feel distant, colder, as though waiting for something to unfold? The city outside the temple carried its life, unaware of the growing shadow within sacred walls. Merchants called in the marketplace, children played, and the sea breeze brought scents of salt and olive. But within the sanctuary, the air thickened each day, like a veil drawing tighter around Medusa's fate. She walked through the chambers, her steps light, her eyes lowered, her mind weighed by unseen burdens. The olive oil lamps flickered as she passed, as though the flame itself trembled with quiet warning. She noticed how even the youngest priestesses kept their distance, their reverence mixed with unease. Her beauty, once praised as a gift, now drew suspicion, as if it carried danger hidden in its glow. Every smile, once given freely, now seemed to carry edges, uncertain, cautious, touched by fear. Medusa began to feel as though her reflection itself was no longer her own, but a stranger's. The polished bronze mirrors no longer brought comfort, but questions she could not voice aloud. Was she still the same priestess who had given her life to Athena? Or had fate changed her already? The silence around her grew louder, pressing in, shaping the shadows into rumors left unspoken. And yet, despite the weight, she still clung to the goddess with devotion, hoping for mercy. Each night, she knelt at the altar, her hands trembling, her voice steady, her heart desperate. She asked not for glory, nor for freedom, but for guidance, for a sign she was not forsaken. But the temple gave no answer beyond the flicker of lamps and the echo of her own words. The silence became her only reply, and silence can be heavier than any spoken judgment. Still, she carried on, her faith a thread stretched thin, but strong enough to guide her steps. Yet destiny does not pause. It does not wait for the prayers of mortals to change its course. One evening, as the sun sank low, the temple filled with shadows stretching long across the floor. The priestesses gathered in uneasy silence, their chants quiet, their eyes filled with apprehension. A sense of inevitability lingered in the air, as if all awaited a truth soon to be revealed. Medusa stood among them, serene yet fragile, unaware her life balanced on the edge of change. The vows she had upheld with honor were now the very ground beneath her trembling feet. She felt it, though she could not name it. The pull of destiny stronger than mortal will. The world outside seemed brighter that night, as if to contrast the shadow within the temple. Stars scattered across the sky, yet within, the sacred halls darkened, awaiting what must come. Medusa closed her eyes, her last prayer soft, her words carried to ears she hoped still listened. For deep within her heart, she feared that the goddess she adored had already turned away. She prayed that the bond between them could hold, that mercy could bloom where judgment loomed. But destiny, once woven, cannot be undone, and its pattern was already set upon her life. Her beauty, her vows, her devotion, all threads twisted into the story that would shape her name. And though she did not yet see the full weight of it, the course had already begun to change. The temple stood as silent witness, its stones cold, its air heavy, its shadows long and deep. Medusa, still faithful, still true, now stood at the threshold of a fate she could not escape. Her story was no longer hers alone, but part of something larger, bound to divine will. And so the night fell, carrying with it the quiet certainty that nothing would remain the same. From this stillness, the storm would rise, and Medusa's life would never again return to peace. The night when destiny revealed its hand came quietly, wrapped in shadows and silence. The temple stood in stillness, its marble walls cold, its lamps flickering with uneasy flame. Medusa walked slowly through the sanctuary, carrying offerings of olive branches and incense. Her steps echoed softly, each sound amplified by the emptiness of the sacred chamber. The air felt heavy, as though the goddess herself had descended to watch unseen. Medusa knelt before Athena's statue, her hands steady but her heart trembling with prayer. She whispered words of devotion, asking for strength, asking for guidance in uncertain times. Her voice rose like smoke from the incense, curling upward to the high stone ceiling. But that night, another presence stirred within the temple, one that did not belong. It was not Athena, nor the gentle spirits of the sanctuary, but something restless. A shadow, carried by fate, stepped into the quiet halls where only purity should dwell. Medusa did not see at first. Her eyes closed, her mind wrapped in devotion. She felt only a sudden chill, as though the sacred space no longer welcomed her. The silence around her deepened, broken only by the faint rustle of unseen movement. Her heart raced, though she did not yet know why, for the air itself felt changed. The temple, once a place of safety, now felt foreign, touched by forces beyond control. When she opened her eyes, the shadows seemed thicker, the corners darker than before. She rose to her feet, uncertain, the olive branches trembling slightly in her grasp. A presence lingered close, unseen yet undeniable, like a storm waiting beyond the horizon. The goddess's statue loomed tall, silent, its gaze unreadable in the dim torchlight. Was Athena watching? Or had the goddess already turned away from her faithful servant? Medusa's thoughts raced, but she pushed them aside, clinging to her vows with resolve. She whispered again, this time pleading for protection, for light to break the darkness. But the silence held firm, and the shadows grew longer, curling across the temple floor. Something had entered her life that could not be undone, a mark placed by destiny. Her devotion was no shield now, her prayers no armor against the coming change. The temple doors creaked faintly, though no hand touched them, as if stirred by unseen wind. The lamps flickered violently, casting Medusa's shadow large against the stone walls. She felt exposed, fragile, standing at the center of forces beyond mortal understanding. And though no words were spoken, the air itself seemed to whisper of transgression. It was the moment of breaking, the silent shatter of vows long held in sacred trust. Medusa stood helpless at the threshold of fate. Her innocence weighed against divine law. The priestesses would later speak of omens, of signs too clear to be denied. But for Medusa, it was a night of silence, a night when everything shifted unseen. The curse had not yet touched her, but its shadow stretched close, already forming. Her name, once spoken with admiration, now began to carry the weight of suspicion. Her beauty, her devotion, her very presence, all became threads in a darker tapestry. She clutched the olive branches tighter, as though their fragile leaves could protect her. But no earthly object could guard against the weaving of divine fate. The temple bells did not ring that night, but the silence felt louder than any sound. Medusa left the sanctuary slowly, her steps unsteady, her eyes clouded with confusion. The night air outside felt no lighter, for the burden clung to her like a shadow. Stars glittered above, distant and cold, indifferent to the storm gathering in her life. Athens slept, unaware, while within one heart the great unraveling had begun. And though no curse was yet spoken, its path had already wound itself around her. Medusa walked into the darkness, her faith intact, but her fate already marked. The story was moving forward, unstoppable, written by hands greater than her own. And from that night on, she would never again find peace within sacred walls. Her life, once steady, now carried the weight of sorrow soon to come. The silence of the temple would echo in her soul forever, a reminder of loss. For destiny had spoken, and Medusa's path now bent toward a sorrowful legend. The morning after that night carried a silence that clung like mist over the temple grounds. Medusa rose with the dawn, her steps soft, her heart heavy, her eyes shadowed by restless dreams. The sanctuary glowed with first light, yet within her, everything felt dim, uncertain, unsettled. She moved through her duties with care, but the air seemed colder, sharper, less forgiving. The priestesses watched her closely, their gazes no longer warm, but touched with suspicion. Whispers followed her through the halls, soft but sharp, like blades hidden behind gentle voices. She had not broken her vows, yet already the air accused her of something unsaid. Her beauty, once admired as divine, now felt like a burden too heavy to bear. It drew eyes that judged, lips that murmured, and silence that grew heavier each hour. Medusa prayed harder, her devotion fierce, but each word seemed swallowed by empty air. The goddess she adored stood silent, her marble face unchanging, her gaze unreadable. Was it anger? Was it disappointment? Or was it the quiet weight of judgment? Medusa's heart longed for reassurance, yet none came, only the growing shadow of fate. The temple bells rang at midday, their sound hollow, echoing through the sacred chambers. Priestesses gathered, but their chants felt thin, lacking the harmony of earlier days. Medusa knelt among them, her voice steady, though her soul trembled beneath the weight. She felt as though she carried not just her own life, but the balance of vows. Each movement, each word seemed measured, tested, watched by forces she could not see. The stillness after prayer pressed in, thicker than stone, heavier than silence should be. Outside, Athens thrived. But inside, the sanctuary became a place of waiting, of judgment. The people in the city still spoke of Medusa's beauty, still praised her as blessed. But within the temple, that same beauty was whispered as a curse, a sign of danger. The contrast cut deep, for admiration had become suspicion, love had turned into unease. Medusa bore it quietly, her dignity unbroken, her faith unshaken, though her heart ached. She still believed Athena watched, still believed the goddess would not forsake her. But the silence stretched longer each day, and silence itself became a painful answer. At night, she dreamed of shadows curling, of eyes upon her, of whispers never spoken. She woke with the echo of voices, yet no one had spoken, no one had called. The olive branches by her bed seemed brittle, their leaves dry though newly cut. Even the lamps burned strangely, their light too dim, their flames swaying without wind. Signs lingered everywhere, quiet but undeniable, that fate was moving toward a reckoning. Still, she held her devotion, her hands folded in prayer, her voice soft but firm. She asked not for escape, but for strength to endure whatever path lay before her. The goddess's silence remained, and with it, the weight of destiny pressed closer. Priestesses avoided her now, their steps quick, their words brief, their eyes uncertain. What once was sisterhood had become distance, and Medusa felt herself more alone. The marble walls around her seemed to echo her solitude, cold and unyielding. The temple, her home, her sanctuary, now felt like a place of trial. Every step she took seemed louder, every prayer heavier, every silence sharper. She was judged not by actions, but by the shadow that clung to her beauty. Her reflection no longer comforted her. It became a stranger, a reminder of doubt. Each glance into polished bronze left her unsettled, unsure of who she truly was. Was she a priestess, faithful and pure? Or had fate already marked her as cursed? The answer lay beyond her reach, hidden in the will of the goddess she served. Still, she walked forward, her faith like a flame flickering but refusing to die. And though the whispers grew louder, though the shadows deepened, she did not falter. For Medusa's heart still belonged to Athena, even as fate prepared to turn against her. The days ahead would bring sorrow, but her devotion remained unbroken, steady, true. And in that devotion lay both her strength and the seed of her tragic destiny. The sea wind carried with it a strange weight, as though the air itself bore secrets untold. Medusa often walked near the cliffs at dusk, seeking calm where the temple gave her none. The waves below crashed against the rocks, their rhythm steady, their voice older than time. She listened to them, hoping their song might quiet the unease that grew inside her. The horizon stretched endless, painted with fire at sunset. Yet her heart felt caged. Her thoughts lingered on silence, Athena's silence, the goddess she still loved and served. Devotion remained, yet doubt pressed harder, whispering that silence might not be love. And still, she prayed, kneeling at night, her whispers softer than the winds outside. But the stillness gave no reply, only the echo of her own voice fading into stone. In the city below, life thrived, unbothered by her inner turmoil or sacred burdens. Fishermen sang songs, children laughed, and lovers walked while she lingered in shadows. She longed for such simplicity. Yet destiny had chosen a different path for her. Her beauty, once a blessing, seemed to mark her for something darker, heavier, unseen. Each passing day deepened the stares, the whispers, and the quiet distance of others. The priestesses no longer embraced her. Their words grew few, their warmth withdrawn. She endured it in silence, believing that patience was strength, that faith was armor. But armor grows heavy when carried too long, without relief, without kindness, without hope. Her dreams grew stranger, filled with images of stone, of shadow, of eyes unblinking. She awoke with fear but no understanding, the meaning hidden, waiting for its time. Even the birds seemed wary of her now, their songs stopping when she drew near. The olive trees bent under unseen winds, their leaves rustling with whispers not heard. Everything felt like a sign, though none spoke clearly, only in riddles of fate. One evening, as dusk fell, she stood by the sea longer than ever before. The tide rose high, the waves reaching with hungry arms, pulling at the shore. She felt as though the world itself leaned closer, waiting for her to stumble. The sky darkened, stars emerging, sharp and bright, staring down with endless patience. Medusa closed her eyes, whispering to the goddess once more, softer than the waves. "Guide me," she pleaded, though her voice trembled with exhaustion more than hope. She waited, but the night gave her nothing, no sign, no warmth, no comfort. Her heart ached, but still she walked back to the temple, shoulders straight, head high. If silence was her answer, then silence she would endure with dignity, with grace. The temple doors closed behind her, echoing like the toll of fate's bell. The priestesses glanced her way but said nothing, their gazes unreadable, their lips sealed. She passed them quietly, her steps steady, though inside she felt fragile as glass. In her chamber, she sat alone, staring at the lamp flame, watching it flicker. The shadows danced across the walls, twisting into shapes that seemed almost alive. For a moment, she thought she saw eyes within them, glowing, watching, waiting. She blinked, and they were gone, leaving her with only her fear and silence. That night, she prayed once more, her words slow, deliberate, heavy with longing. She begged not for release, but for meaning, for purpose within the silence. And though no voice came, her own words echoed stronger than before. Perhaps, she thought, strength was not given, but born from the weight of trial. Perhaps her silence was not abandonment, but a test, a shaping of her spirit. She held on to that thought, fragile yet fierce, a small flame against the dark. And in that fragile hope, she drifted into uneasy sleep, unaware of fate's approach. For destiny moved unseen, as patient as the sea, as certain as the rising dawn. And Medusa, though unaware, was walking toward the moment that would change her forever. The temple bells rang at dawn, their tones sharp, carrying weight like a verdict delivered by unseen hands. Medusa rose with the sound, her heart uneasy, sensing the day held more than ordinary prayers. The halls were colder, the air thick with silence, and the priestesses avoided her gaze once more. She walked with grace, her steps soft, though her spirit trembled beneath the weight of whispers. Each glance that brushed against her felt like judgment, though no words were spoken aloud. The sacred fire burned low in the altar, its flame dim, as if reflecting her turmoil. Medusa knelt before it, her lips moving in prayer, her voice steady though her heart ached. Still, the silence pressed back, heavy as stone, giving her no warmth, no sign of mercy. In the courtyard, she found herself alone, the other priestesses gathering far from her presence. They murmured among themselves, their eyes flicking her way, sharp, uncertain, unwilling to approach. Her beauty, once praised as divine, now seemed the cause of distance, of cold suspicion. She did nothing to deserve this, yet the temple air accused her without need of proof. The olive trees swayed though no wind stirred, their branches whispering secrets she could not know. Medusa touched their leaves, feeling the dryness as though even nature withdrew its kindness. At midday, she carried offerings, as tradition demanded, laying fruit and grain before Athena's statue. The goddess's marble eyes seemed fixed on her, unchanging, unreadable, full of quiet power. Medusa bowed low, her heart whispering, "Tell me I haven't failed you. Tell me I remain yours." But the statue remained still, its silence deeper than the ocean, its gaze colder than stone. The priestesses behind her did not kneel as deeply, their reverence marked by unease. Medusa felt it in her bones. The sanctuary no longer embraced her as it once had. By evening, shadows grew long, stretching across the marble floors, reaching like unseen hands. The lamps flickered strangely, their flames bending, as though listening to secrets not spoken aloud. Medusa sat alone in her chamber, staring into polished bronze, her reflection staring back. Her beauty seemed unfamiliar, her eyes too sharp, her face too radiant, almost haunting. She whispered, "Why must I carry this gift if it turns hearts cold, if it breeds distance?" Her own reflection gave no answer, only silence, only the weight of her own longing. That night, her dreams returned, stranger than before, filled with visions of stone and silence. She saw faces frozen mid-breath, their eyes wide, their voices caught forever in stillness. She woke with a gasp, her chamber dark, the lamp extinguished though she had not touched it. The gall air felt thick, charged, as though something unseen stood watching, waiting in the shadows. Her heart pounded, yet she did not cry out, only whispered another prayer to Athena. "If I must endure this, give me strength. If I must fall, let it be with dignity." Her words trembled, but her resolve remained, fragile yet fierce, like flame against the dark. She returned to the temple halls, her steps echoing softly, her presence filling the silence. The marble pillars loomed, their shadows stretching like watchful eyes, ancient and unyielding. Medusa paused before the altar once more, her head bowed, her heart open. She prayed not for favor, but for clarity, for meaning in the silence that grew heavier. The night deepened, the stars outside cold and sharp, the city below hushed in sleep. Within the sanctuary, Medusa remained alone, caught between devotion and the shadow of destiny. Each breath she took echoed louder, each thought pressing closer to a truth not yet revealed. The curse that awaited her was not yet spoken, but its shadow lingered, growing, waiting, and though she did not yet see it, Medusa was already walking within its path. The silence of Athena, the whispers of priestesses, the omens in her dreams. Each was a sign. A quiet gathering of fate, a weaving of threads, pulling her toward a moment unchangeable. And in that silence, heavy and sacred, Medusa's faith remained her only shield. Her devotion, unbroken, would carry her forward, even as destiny prepared its cruel hand. The story of Medusa does not end in silence, though silence cloaked her days in shadow. Her fate became a tale passed down, reshaped by voices, retold through fear and wonder. Some say she was cursed, struck down by divine judgment, her beauty twisted into dread. Others say she was transformed, her spirit hardened, her form reshaped to survive betrayal. Whichever version lingers, the truth rests not in punishment, but in meaning left behind. Medusa's story is not only of sorrow, but of endurance, of dignity unbroken by despair. Though painted as a monster, her heart remained human, longing for peace, for mercy. Her silence became a voice, speaking across ages of pain, beauty, and misunderstood strength. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, played her part in this tale of change and consequence. Some say she cursed. Others say she gave Medusa power, both gift and burden combined. Perhaps wisdom itself lies between, not in judgment, but in recognition of human fragility. For gods shape destiny, but mortals carry the weight, living the truth of choices made. Medusa's name endures, carved into myth, whispered in stories, echoed in countless hearts. She reminds us that beauty can be both blessing and trial, gift and burden alike. She teaches that silence is not always absence. Sometimes it is the measure of strength. Her reflection, feared by all, still reflects courage, resilience, and the weight of being seen. The world remembers her as shadow, yet within that shadow flickers an unyielding flame. She became a symbol, not of terror alone, but of mystery, survival, and untold power. Generations have told her tale, shaping her image as warning, as wonder, as mirror of fear. Yet within those retellings lies a question. Who was Medusa before the curse? She was a priestess, a woman of faith, a heart bound to service and devotion. Her life held meaning before the shadow, before the whispers, before destiny turned. To forget that is to forget her humanity, the soul that walked before the myth. And so, her story carries a lesson: to see beyond appearances, beyond fear, beyond silence. Athena, goddess of wisdom, remains in the tale, a figure of order and divine weight. Her hand shaped fate. Yet wisdom asks us not to condemn, but to question, to reflect. Why do we fear what is different? Why do we turn beauty into burden, faith into trial? The tale of Medusa asks these questions, leaving them to echo through every age. It lingers not as an answer, but as a mirror, reflecting our own fears and judgments. For within myth lies truth, hidden in shadow, waiting for those who choose to see. The waves of time cannot wash her away, nor silence erase her name from memory. Medusa endures, her story breathing still, alive in the voices that retell her journey. And you, listener, now carry her tale, shaped anew in your heart and your thought. Perhaps you will remember her not as monster, but as soul, as symbol, as mystery. Perhaps you will hear her silence not as curse, but as strength, steady and unbroken. The story of Athena and Medusa is not only of gods and curses, but of us all. It is a story of faith and loss, of beauty and burden, of judgment and resilience. It is the echo of every voice silenced, every heart misunderstood, every soul reshaped. And though Medusa's eyes turned men to stone, her spirit turns us toward reflection. Reflection of what it means to be seen, to be judged, to endure beyond fear. Her myth is not only her own, it belongs to every heart that listens, that remembers. So as our tale closes, carry it with care, with wonder, with the weight of wisdom. For Medusa still waits in silence, her story alive, her meaning undimmed by centuries. And Athena still watches, her wisdom a mirror, her silence a question left to her. The story ends, but its echo remains, carried forward by those who dare to listen.